Welcome to the Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do podcast with your host, Tom Singer. In each episode, we explore the interesting lives of business leaders, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and others who have a healthy dose of the entrepreneurial spirit. It is time to explore something cool. Now, here is your host, Tom Singer.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do. Thank you so much for pulling your chair up to the cool kids table. I started this podcast almost 5 years ago because I wanted access to entrepreneurs who were doing really cool things. I wanted to have conversations with really smart people because I know one thing, and that is success leaves clues. When you get a chance to have conversations or listen in to podcasts like this one with really smart people doing really awesome things, you can't help it. Along the way, you're going to pick up an idea, a nugget, a theory, or a concept that's going to inspire you or clear some of the path so that you can go out there and succeed more. And that's what I've been trying to do for now, 465 episodes, 67 episodes of Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do. And I'm really excited today because I have Tim Campos, and he is the CEO of Woven, and he has done some really interesting stuff. His company's doing cool things, and he is just going to open it up. He is going to share with us all of his brilliance. Hey, Tim, welcome to Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do.
Well, thank you for having me here, Tom. I'm really excited to be here. Kind of honored to be at the cool kids table. So thanks for inviting me to have a seat.
I don't know. You look like you were always at the cool kids table in high school. I was on the outside looking in, but I created my own table, so it's worked out really well.
Awesome.
Hey, I don't read the bios that PR people send to me and stuff like that. So why don't you tell everybody, what is Woven? What's the company all about?
So Woven is a next generation calendar. We've all grown up with tools like Microsoft Outlook and Google Calendar. And most people, when you ask them what they think about their calendar, they think of it in a very derogatory sense. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And Woven was created to help address a lot of the problems that calendars have to really bring them into this century.
So how long has Woven been around? When did you start the company?
So my co-founder and I started Woven immediately after leaving Facebook 2 years ago. And we have been live with the product since last November, so about 6 months. We took 18 months to do the initial product development and then rolled it out to the world in November. And here we are today.
Nice. So you left Facebook. I've heard of that company.
Yeah, it's a tiny little website that a few people have used.
So let's talk about leaving the behemoth of the tiny little company like Facebook and going off on your own. What sort of led you to do that?
It's a bunch of things. Throughout my career, I have always enjoyed working at startups or companies that feel like startups. I worked at Sybase. It's a really old database company when it was really small. I worked at SGI when it was in its heyday. And even though it was a larger company, it felt very entrepreneurial then. I did an internet startup. I worked at Facebook when it was much smaller. So I really love the entrepreneurial spirit, and that's something that has always been motivating for me. But every single one of those companies was somebody else's company. I always wanted to have the opportunity to create my own. And after being at Facebook for almost 7 years, my co-founder and I decided that it was time. It was time to go venture on our own. And that's in part what motivated Woven. Now, the space itself, we can talk about in a little bit. That was also quite motivating for me. But at the end of it, I just had it in my heart, and I don't know that I could go back.
So that was going to be my next question so now that you've been doing this for 2 years, what is it that you love about the life of an entrepreneur? I mean, you sat in entrepreneurial companies, but you weren't the guy. How do you feel now? What do you love about it?
I think what I love about it is also what I don't love about it. It is not for the faint of heart. Being an entrepreneur, even when you've had success in your career, maybe even especially when you've had success in your career, is an enormous burden and responsibility and can be really challenging. But at the same time, that's also the fun part of it, is that I get an opportunity to do everything. So whatever the company needs to be successful is what I have to dive in, try to become an expert in it as quickly as I can, and do the best that we need. Whether that's products, engineering, marketing, sales, investor relations, all these different things. So I love the diversity of my day and all the different problems and challenges that I have to deal with.
So are there any parts of it you don't like? Do you ever think, I wonder if Facebook would take me back?
Well, Facebook's made my life a little easy on that front as of late, but I think the hard part about it is it never stops. You don't get a vacation from this, especially as the founder CEO. There's a lot of responsibility that you take on, and every problem that hasn't been solved is your problem until you figure out either how to solve it yourself or to get somebody to help solve it for you. Or both. And so that can be quite stressful, and it's, an emotional journey. The highs are really, really high when you have great weeks like we did last week and user growth is through the charts and engagement is through the charts. You feel awesome. And then there are other times where things aren't so great, where you have a bunch of bugs or you get bad user feedback from a lot of different people, or you have, an investor who doesn't, react the way that you want them to. And so the highs are high and the lows are low, and you just got to learn that every day is going to be different. So don't get too excited when they're so high, and don't get too bummed out when they're so low.
And you do have those days. I've been working for myself for 10 years now. I'm a solopreneur. I work for me, and me works for me. And but there's definitely those days where I once in a while I think, you know what? Let today slide, because you have those other days where you're on top of the world. So it does all balance itself out.
It's a great life lesson just in general, because life is this way. But I think you have to learn it as an entrepreneur in order to survive. There was an article I read about a year and a half before I founded Woven, which talked about the mental health of the entrepreneur. And it basically pointed out that it's not all, puppy dogs and roses, and it's not every day feels like an incredible, awesome day. And that can be really burdensome on the entrepreneur. There's a lot of depression and there's a lot of anxiety that can trigger. And so you have to have ways to sort of deal with your mind, to make yourself feel confident that you're doing the right things, and stay the course and not react to your emotions, and instead look at the data and make the decisions that you need to make and move forward. And it does pan out. I mean, when you have those good days, it's it's usually a result of hard work and good decisions.
So there's a lot of people out there who work for companies, and they have that same little feeling that you sort of described earlier on in this conversation, that, they like their job, they did well, but something inside of them, it's not their company. They want to do it. They're listening to this saying, I want to do what Tim did. So what advice do you have for people who are going to leave a company, leave the safety of something like a Facebook, and go start their own path?
Just do it. I mean, not to sound like a Nike commercial, but at the end of the day, it's we're all smart professionals here, and anybody who's in the Silicon Valley or at a tech company or who's thinking about this probably is established enough in their career that they're smart. And so if you're really that passionate about it, there's no time like the present. You can sit there and you can talk yourself out of starting a company or taking the entrepreneurial journey easily. The risk, the financial burden, the impact to your relationships, all of these things. And, to be quite frank, if you're the kind of person where that is too scary for you, that maybe it's not the right life. Because like I said at the beginning, it's a journey, and it's sometimes there's tough days. But if after thinking about that, you're the kind of person where it still feels like something that you'd want to do. In fact, it energizes you to be able to overcome challenges, then stop waiting. That was probably one of the things, if I look back on my career, that I've always questioned is, should I have done this earlier? And, and I could draw the arguments either way. And at the end of the day, I'm quite happy with all the life decisions that I've made. But, I certainly did not want to retire asking that question. I didn't want to end my career saying, oh, what if I had done this? What if I had done that? I'm not that kind of person. So I made the gut call. And, even though at the time everybody was like, hey, how can you do that? How can you leave a company like Facebook? It all works out. And I have found that is a truism in life that if you're committed to your dreams, eventually they all work out.
Well, and it's interesting that you say that because it rings really true with me. And the regular listeners of this podcast know that it's something I talk about all the time, is that my only regret is that I wasn't braver to try my own thing earlier along the way. Now, of course, if I had done that, it might not be what I'm doing now. And I really love what I do now. So, sometimes you have to go through the path that you go to get to the destination that you're at. But I spent 20 years in sales and marketing, and I was good at it. I worked here in Austin. I sold to the tech community. I moved over into marketing. I was really good. I won awards. I moved the bottom line of companies that I worked for. But on the flip side of that, my ladder was against the wrong wall. I wasn't really happy doing what I was doing. So eventually, through a layoff and through timing, I found my way into sort of following my dream, which has been to speak at corporations and at associations at their conferences. And over the years, I've sort of had a bunch of different things that I've done, but it's been a lot of fun. But I do think that if I could have done it earlier, it would be better. And I released about 3 weeks ago an episode of this podcast on what would I tell the class of 2019 graduating from college, because I have a daughter who graduated with a business degree from Carnegie Mellon and didn't want to jump right into a big giant company. It doesn't mean she won't, but she wasn't chasing Wall Street. She went there with the thought that was what she was going to do. But instead, she's trying to start her own movement in women's fitness, and she wants to work for this little boutique company and maybe do some contract work on the side. And I said, you know what? Do it. And she said, I know. You always said that your only regret is you wish you started younger. And I told her, I go, you may or may not be making the right decision, but at least you're owning the decision. I didn't do that. I did what my parents and what society told me to do. And so when you said that, I was like, yeah, Tim, I agree with you. Yay.
Yeah. No, first off, I appreciate hearing the story about your daughter. I have a 15-year-old myself, and first off, congratulations getting her into a great university. But it's this same thing with my kids. I definitely think
and by the way, we didn't have to buy her way in like.
Well, congratulations on that too.
Like some of the people, I couldn't afforded to have bought off a coach, so she got in the old-fashioned way. She earned it.
Well, life is about struggle. And so sometimes, you struggle to achieve your objectives, whether it's you have to work hard in school or, it takes a while for you to find your passion. And, if it's too easy, it's hard to feel really good about what you've accomplished. And so,
well, the interesting thing is my daughter, I mean, I don't want to take this off onto a conversation about her, but her dream was to be the CEO of like a Fortune 500 company. So she was looking for a top tier school. She was making all these choices. And while she was there, she sort of found herself. That's not the life that she wants. She wants to be part of a family and not work 80 hours a week. And she got really into this idea of women understanding the importance of strength training. And so she started a coaching program for women about weightlifting and weight loss. And I'll be danged if she doesn't have a couple of clients and she's got people who follow her on Instagram and these women who she's coached through, how to get stronger and why. I read the comments that they leave. She seems to be really good at it. She wants to start a movement. And I'm like, I think the time to start a movement is when you're 22. So I was all behind her, and she said, she goes, I go, you didn't have to go to Carnegie Mellon to be a fitness trainer. And she said, no, but I had to come here to find myself.
Yeah. Well, that's an awesome story. And, it's interesting because we see this even with a little bit with our users that, when people are, entrepreneurs or independents that work at small companies, most of their time is allocated to achieving their mission and accomplishing the goals that they have. Whereas the bigger the company that you are in, increasingly you spend a higher percentage of your time dealing with the issues of the organization. Mm-hmm. And, for some people, they're very passionate about that. They're good at process. They're good at, getting groups of people to beat to the same drum. And for them, the corporate life is exactly what they should be doing. But for others of us, that feels like a constraint. And the entrepreneurial path, I think, is the way to build the future that you want for yourself. So I celebrate what your daughter's doing. I think that's incredible.
So, Tim, one of the things I do is I teach a program. I call it the paradox of potential, because we get so excited about potential. You hire Becky into your company and you think, oh my God, Becky is so great. She has this wonderful background and, she has this right degree and she has a special certification. She has so much potential. She's going to revolutionize everything around the company. And a year later, you're transitioning Becky out of the company. Well, how come? If she had potential, why didn't it work out? Well, my philosophy and what I've learned from interviewing hundreds of people is potential doesn't equal performance. So you've worked around the Silicon Valley for a long time. You've seen a lot of companies with a lot of potential who didn't make it. And then you've seen some that have just blown the doors off of everything that we've ever dreamed possible. So what do you think the delta is? What's the difference for entrepreneurs who go from potential to results versus those who get lost in the gap?
Well, I do think, just to get this off the table, that there is a little bit of luck and timing. That, for some people, they're at the right place at the right time with the right solution, or just fortune favors them. And the reality for people is you can't gain access to that if you don't play. So going back to the whether or not be an entrepreneur, if you're if you take the plunge, then you now are in the pool for that. But it's also largely not a controllable thing. So, let's take that off the hill. I think the other part of what drives success is just tenacity. It is so hard. It is really easy. It's so hard to be successful. It's really easy to give up. And we look at the wonder kids, the WhatsApps of the world who, just got it right very early on and blew up, or the Accomplis. I think it was 18 months between Accompli getting founded and when they were acquired by Microsoft. And they're fantastic examples, but most of them don't work that way. Most startups, they slog for years before they finally get product market fit, and then they start growing. Look at Airtable right now. They've been going through this. That company was founded, I think, in 2012. With what seemed like a crazy idea of like, oh, we're going to make the next better Excel. Well, what's that going to look like? But they've done it now. Like they have fantastic growth, and that if they gave up in 2015 or in 2016, they wouldn't be where they are right now. So I think tenacity plays a huge part. Obviously, team and having a good dynamic within your organization. It's a lot easier to do big things with more than one person. So the more people you have working for you, the better, but also the quality of those people, and most importantly, how effectively you all work together, I think, is another key factor. And I've seen a lot of startups die simply because people couldn't get along with each other, because they get hard. And, it's kind of like a marriage, right? Where, when you're dating and you're looking at your spouse, super attractive woman, want to go hang out with her all the time, sounds great, but you get married and, you go through financial difficulty or kids or all this other stuff that's tough and hard, then all of a sudden, maybe you're not as attractive to each other. But if you're able to work through those tough times, that's what leads to long-term bliss. And I think it's the exact same thing with companies. And so I personally think this is one of my greatest strengths is tenacity. If you talk to people who really, really know me, they'll tell you that one of my greatest assets is I don't give up no matter how hard it gets. I might complain, I might cry, I might get fussy about it, but I don't give up. And definitely I can say on our journey right now, it has not been easy. We still have a lot of hard stuff in front of us, and we would not be where we are today if we decided that this is too hard.
So I think tenacity is a secret weapon for a lot of people. So I want to explore that just a little bit more. I don't want to let that go, because I think what you said there in the last little nugget that you dropped there, I think that's really important. So I think a lot of people give up too soon. I think you're right. It's the people who keep going. I mean, in my world as a professional speaker, there's a joke that it takes 10 years to be an overnight success. And, so many people who are like speaking at all these companies and all these conferences, they just blow up, and people are like, oh, they just came on the scene. And you don't see that for 10 years, they were slogging out, doing, small little groups, speaking at Rotary clubs and everything else. And so where does that tenacity come from? Why do you have it?
Well, not to totally psychoanalyze myself, I think this goes back to just the beginning. I grew up in a family. I was a middle child, and middle children often get the short end of the stick. They're not the firstborn, and they're not the baby, and so they kind of get forgotten about. And I also have I was fortunate enough to grow up in a family with really, really smart people, so I always felt like I just didn't have it. And in order to sort of survive, I had to get over all of that stuff and just focus on finding what I was good at. And I found with time that that led to success. That one thing of just not giving up led to success. My first job, I'll give you a perfect example of this. I was a freshman at Cal. I didn't want to work waiting tables. I applied for an internship at Sybase, and I was super enthralled by the pay rate that they had, which was like 3 times as much as I could make waiting tables. But I applied, and my wife was like, or my girlfriend at the time, who became my wife, was like, okay, did you follow up with them? I said, no. She's like, we got to follow up with them. Long story short, she encouraged me to keep following up with them until they finally called me back to say, please stop calling. We're done. We filled the role, and we never want to hear from you again because you're so annoying. But the guy that they hired got appendicitis, and 3 weeks later, they were screwed because it was too close to the summer for them to restart the internship process. And because I had been so perseverant on this, I was on the top of the list. They called me back and were like, hey, can you please come in and interview? And I did. And I got the job. And that was the beginning of almost 4.5 years working at Sybase. I never ended that internship. They loved what I did. They loved my passion. And that got me started in my career. So this has been a part of me from early on. That said, I know a lot of people who have made big life changes midway through their lives because they faced really tough moments. And it sort of triggered something. It flipped a switch inside of them that, oh my gosh, for me to survive this divorce, or for me to survive this health scare, or for me to survive this near-death experience professionally, I have to figure out how to do things differently. And that one thing can give them the drive and the motivation to overcome adversity. So it's not necessarily inherent or innate. It can be acquired through experience. But in my case, it was something that I've enjoyed as part of my character from very early on.
Oh, well, I love the story about just keep berating them about the job and them saying go away and them being in the right place. I had a very similar thing happen in my career. I used to work for a publishing company that sold advertising for chambers of commerce. They did special, big, high-end, expensive publications. And I kind of fell in love with Austin. I moved here 28 years ago before Austin became sort of the cool tech place to be. And as Austin started to grow, I wanted to work at the Chamber of Commerce because I thought, how cool is that? And they didn't have a job for me. I wasn't a good match, but I kept going in through different ways. And finally, they sent me a letter that was very polite, but said, go away, kid, you bother me. And it was sent by the secretary, the assistant, to the CEO. And I sent her a handwritten note that said, thank you so much for your time. And then their publisher was looking for a sales rep. And she called and said, okay, I've never gotten a handwritten note for a rejection letter. She goes, we have to introduce you to these people. And they hired me, and I worked for that publishing company for 4 years, and it sort of launched my career. And I worked all over the country for them on different projects for different cities. And I always think it was that little handwritten note that just said, thank you for not picking me, that got me picked for something better. Yeah.
I've experienced a lot of that. I had another experience in my life. This is actually not fairly well known, so exclusive for your
It is listeners. Now. That's right.
But I was being recruited to be the CEO of a fairly well-known tech company. And for me, it was a great honor that they were even considering me because I didn't think I was qualified at the time. But the interview process between me and this company went so well. We just connected, the board and myself. I loved the culture of this company. There were problems. It was in a different state, and it was going to require me to move my family. But I was just really passionate about the culture. But it didn't work out. They had an even better candidate who was internal, and I had the chance to interview with him. This guy would have worked for me if they had hired me, and we got along fantastic. So it was such a positive experience that even after it not working out, they invited me to join the board, and I'm still with this company now. It is a part of my professional life. So you just never know how these things are going to work out, and it's just best to sort of focus on the journey and the relationships, and the successes and the failures are kind of fleeting. They're just sort of moments in time, and just roll with them.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. So I've got a couple more questions for you before I can let you go. But first, sure. I got to thank the sponsor of this episode. So this episode is brought to you by PodFly Productions. PodFly takes the time and the headache out of creating your own podcast. PodFly sets you up with the right equipment, training, and guidance to ensure that you're going to sound amazing. PodFly does all the heavy lifting and the technical work so that you can focus on creating great content, growing your audience, and interviewing really cool people like Tim Campos from Woven. Hey, if you want to start a podcast, and I know some of you do, jump over to podfly.net/coolthings and check out the offer that they have for the listeners of this show. So, Tim, I call this show Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do. What's the coolest thing you're doing right now with your company?
One of the things that is really exciting about the space that we're in is that it really has not been brought into this century. So Woven's a calendar company. And one of the first issues I get from people is, well, okay, so what's different about what you do? And despite the fact that people don't like the calendars that they have, it's hard for them to imagine using the calendar in a totally different way. And that's basically what we are trying to enable. We rebuilt the calendar from the back end forward, which means our calendar can do a lot of things that aren't possible with Google Calendar, with Microsoft Outlook. And by the way, we maintain the compatibility with them. So it's not a lift and switch where your data is all gone and you can't keep using Google for what it's good at. Use Woven in conjunction with those calendars. But one of the things that I'm really excited about, the world has gone totally mobile, right? Mobile devices have transformed the workplace. They've transformed how we communicate and collaborate with each other. And, when it comes to calendaring, the mobile device is sort of like an afterthought. We use calendars on our phone to help figure out where do we go next. That's it. But when was the last time that you scheduled a meeting on your phone, or even worse, like if it has a multi-party meeting that requires a lot of collaboration to figure out when is the right time for everybody? Most people just give up and don't even try. They'll do that at their desktop. And we have built a really kick-ass, I hope I can say that on your show.
Sure, why not?
All right. Mobile app that makes creating events super simple. I can do a board meeting on my phone with just 3 taps. It's basically open up Woven, select board event. It will automatically give me the times that work for everybody, pick one of those, and then hit schedule. And it invites all the people. It's already a time that's going to work for my investors. It's got the conference room all set up, the location instructions, everything. But where this is going for us that we're really excited about is messaging, because calendars are built on email. And so that's basically where most people collaborate on coordinating a calendar event over email. But increasingly, like with my kids, they never use email. It's all about text messaging or Instagram Direct or Facebook or whatever. And we have built a really awesome messaging interface for calendaring to make it possible for people to coordinate time with each other over. Initially, it'll be focusing on iMessage on Apple devices, but then we'll add Slack and Facebook Messenger and others. And it's really fun to use because it's just so easy and it takes all the friction out of the scheduling process. So that's probably the biggest thing that I'm excited about right now. But what I really love about being the entrepreneur is, this messaging interface. That's this month's sprint. We're going to move on to some other things, and we've got a long list of stuff that we've done. And this space is just ripe for disruption. There's so many good things to do.
So is your current product, is it an enterprise product, or is it something the individual can go and nab?
No, this is actually designed right now for the individual. This is actually one of the learnings for us early on. We originally started with the idea that, I'm a CIO. I've been a CIO of 2 different companies. I know a lot of other CIOs. I figured this is a superpower. I'll go into corporations and I'll say, hey, Mr. CIO that I've known for a long time, use this product for your company, and we're all said and done. And that probably is in our future at some point. But one thing that they don't tell you maybe they do, and I just wasn't paying attention in entrepreneur school, is that your product is never right on day one. It's never right. In fact, it is almost guaranteed to be wrong. And what you need is a bunch of at-bats. You need a bunch of failures or a bunch of problems with it to learn how to make it right. That's hard to do in enterprise software when each CIO is going to be making a big bet on us for thousands of people. And so we found that actually it was much better to go the other way and to go after the individual, the entrepreneur, the solopreneur, the small business owner, the independent consultant. And those users have just been fantastic for us. They give us a lot of great feedback. We've been able to connect to the people that want their calendar to be more useful for them because time is money for them. And so they've invested as much time with us as we have in the product, which is we're very honored to have them as users, because these are the people that really help make Woven great. So,
and that's the majority of my listening audience. It's the small solopreneur trying to get out there and grow something and create something. So everybody needs to go check out Woven.
Awesome. Well, we have a lot of empathy for the challenges, and we built some really cool features where it's really easy to use Woven to get clients to sign up for initial engagements. It makes it a lot easier to coordinate those follow-up conversations with them, especially if you can get them using Woven too, so the calendars can talk to each other. We have a lot of collaborative features in the product that make it so that meetings are no longer just about when are they happening and where are they happening, but also about what are we talking about, and making sure that we have good agendas and conversations and make good use of our time.
So if someone right now is like itching, saying, I need a better calendaring system, I love this guy, where do they go to find out? Where do they go to get it?
They should go to woven.com and they can sign up for Woven right now. It is for Google's Calendar and Google Suite users only. So for those of you who use Office 365 or Exchange, support for that will be coming later this year, but we don't have it just yet. But for the Google Calendar or Google Suite user, you can sign up for it right now. There's no cost to it. We also have a mobile app, which is available on the iOS App Store. And we have a desktop app that's available in both the Mac and Windows app stores.
Awesome. Well, I'll go check it out because those are the exact things that I use, everything that you're supporting. So.
Well, that's good. We've done our market research well then.
That's right. If I'm the target market, you did very, very well.
You are the target market.
Perfect. So Tim, I love to ask people who come on the show, because we could talk about you and Woven, and I mean, your background sounds like it's got so much more that we could just, like an onion, just keep peeling it back here. But I kind of get tired of the fact that we live in the, hey, look at me world. And I think that true entrepreneurs, I think they're observers. So I love to ask everyone who comes on the show, when you look out there into the world of entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurosphere, if you will, who is it that you admire? Who is it that you say, wow, she or he, they're doing the cool stuff?
Wow, it's an awesome question. And it's hard for me to nail that down to just one person. It's more like the personality. I have a lot of respect for two kinds of entrepreneurs. One is the entrepreneur who's like your daughter, straight out of school and wants to change the world and is basically choosing not to start off by doing that in a corporate setting. And what's amazing to me about this personality type is that they don't know what they don't know. And at this stage in their career, that's actually kind of helpful because they don't know you can't do things. So they've basically not developed the limitations that we, over time in our lives, establish in our brain. So I love those kinds of entrepreneurs, and I see so many of them. And your story about your daughter, that's part of what really got me excited, is that she fits straight into that persona. I also love the people who make a decision to do it later on in life. There's a great study that I read that success of the entrepreneur is very much correlated with age. That the more experienced you are by the time you start the company, the more likely it is that your business will be successful. And I think the study was done by Berkeley, if people want to look on it online. And so, those people who, and there's a lot of them, a lot of ex-Facebookers who are doing this now, like the guys over at Keep Analytics. or people.ai, where they're taking what they've learned from their companies and they're building something new out of it. So those two are the two personas that I most identify with. There are specific people that I find that have really done amazing things in their life. I hesitate to give them too much credit because I kind of feel like they already have enough of it, so I don't want to sort of add on to the bandwagon. But I do think that a lot of the success of companies like Facebook and Tesla and others do ultimately go back to the founder CEOs and the willingness that they have made to sort of challenge the status quo.
And those two unnamed founder CEOs happen to also be the two most mentioned names from that question.
Yeah, and I hate to jump on the bandwagon. I mean, I had the honor of working with Zuck, so I know him firsthand. I've met Elon a few times, and so I understand both of their personalities. Probably Zuck a lot better than Elon's. But when I was interviewed at Facebook before I joined there, he was the last interview that I had. And the question that I had going into this interview was, is he smart or lucky? I remember it took me about 5 minutes to sort of get over myself when I walked in the room, because I was literally studying him in business school at the same time as I was doing this interview. And so it was just weird to actually be right in front of the guy. But he's a very down-to-earth person. But the end of the conversation for me definitely answered the question, which is it's both. He was lucky. He was in the right place at the right time, but he's also ridiculously smart. And one of the greatest attributes I think he has is he knows what he's not good at, and he surrounds himself with brilliant people who are good at those things. And that's a lesson for all of us.
So I don't know him, and of course I would love to interview him, but I will tell you the thing as an observer, I saw him 13 years ago. He was the keynote at South by Southwest, and it's gone down as like one of the worst keynotes in the history of a business event. He didn't know how to speak yet. He was new on the scene. He asked to be interviewed rather than speak, and the whole interview just went sideways. Like, people were streaming out. If you look back at whatever year it was, there's pages on the internet about this thing. And then, like 3 years later, I saw him give a speech. And he was great. I mean, he wasn't like, ooh, the best speaker I've ever seen, but for a CEO speaker, he was great. And the thing that triggered in my mind was, here's a guy who he had to have known how bad the South by Southwest thing was. You couldn't have turned on a computer without knowing how bad it was. And so what did he do? He didn't make a big deal about it. He didn't go on and say, oh, fuck you. Oh, I can't say that. But he obviously went and got coached on how to be a better presenter. And I've always thought, that is something that we need more of. Is, okay, here's an area that I need to improve. Hey, I'm going to go get coaching and make myself better at that. And now when you see him do shareholder meetings and things like that are streamed, he's great. He's fine. And that always stuck with me. I don't know him from a load of polls, but that always stuck with me as an admirable thing that, hey, here's a weakness. I'm going to tackle it.
Well, I'll give you a couple of other nuggets to sort of complete out that picture. He isn't still the best speaker at Facebook. So this story doesn't end with him getting coaching and becoming the most amazing speaker in the universe. He doesn't have to be, because he has people like Cheryl and others around him. But what he has been really, really good at, and I think that this is a credit to him. Most people don't know this. He makes himself very available to the company. So he does a weekly Q&A every week. It's live streamed to the entire company. Anybody can stand up and ask a question. And I remember when I first started going to these things, I was a little nervous to ask tough questions. And I got to know the PR team around him. Even though this is external or internal thing, he still had people that would help basically surface the questions that people are asking about and raise them. But anyways, one of the things that they told me is the harder the question, the more likely it is he's going to answer it. He doesn't like the softballs. He wants the ones that are really challenging, really tough. And he's true to that. And so what it does is it reinforces a culture that it's okay to ask tough questions, right? I mean, you can do it in a disrespectful way, but most of the time people can do it in a respectful manner. And it's okay, because what it does is it brings things to the surface so you can talk about it. And imagine him doing this week in, week out for years. And when I saw him stand in front of the Senate committee when he had to go speak to them, despite the fact he was a bit robotic, somebody told him he had to prefix everything with "yes, Senator," "yes, Senator," "yes, Senator." It almost sounded like he was being forced to say that. The rest of it was vintage Zuck. That he doesn't mind the tough questions. He doesn't mind the stupid questions. And he is on top of things. He wants to answer the queries that people have. He wants to make sure that he satisfies their concern. And most importantly, what he does, and this is really powerful within a company, I think this is a great lesson for leaders, he gives people insight into the algorithm that he uses to make decisions. That's my language, by the way, not his. But what are the principles that he uses to assess things? And with time, you start to learn the answer to questions of, well, what would Zuck do? What would Zuck say, right? So you don't have to actually go to him to answer questions. You can basically just apply it yourself. A lot of that comes from just being comfortable standing in front of people and talking to them. So a lot of good things I could say about him. I won't say any of the things that I'm concerned about.
That's not what we're here for. But since we've gone down this path, I am going to throw in an extra question. So, sure. As the CEO of your own company, what's one lesson you learned from him and from Facebook that you are using in your company?
Oh, well, we definitely learned the power of getting the culture right up front. My co-founder and I were very deliberate about this when we created the company. We had a bunch of things that we both really enjoyed about Facebook's culture that we wanted, a few things that we didn't. And we built that into how we hire. It wasn't just about your skills and, are you interested in the space that we're in? We also wanted to know, how do you think, how do you behave when things are ambiguous, when things are tough, when, are you the kind of person that needs to have things be told what to do? And, we knew what we were looking for in all this, and we got it. And one of the greatest assets of our team is they deal with ambiguity and adversity like none other that I have had a chance to work with. You can imagine in our space, it is very difficult to find the right balance between innovating and showing people new ways to use time and, meeting the table stakes of existing products that are out in the marketplace just so that you can play. And, the number of decisions, product decisions that my team is able to make on their own to deal with that is just phenomenal, and is one of the things that has helped us, accomplish as much as we have in the amount of time that we've been working on this product. So I think the culture piece is the one that I will most take away from Facebook. I will also say there's probably a dozen others.
Nice.
Good learnings from that company.
Nice. Hey, the last question, Tim, that I ask everybody who comes on the show is sort of, what do you do to give back to the greater good? And the reason I ask this is I think if we're entrepreneurs, we're fortunate. And I feel very fortunate every single day. And I think that it's about more than just making money. And so I always ask people, because people do it in so many different ways, what is it that you do to impact?
Yeah. So there's a organization that I'm on the board for called Year Up. And that's spelled because it's always, people hear Europe. It's not Europe. Year, as in time of year, up. Y-E-A-R-U-P. And I love this organization. It is, I think, exactly the kind of hope that our country needs, particularly in this day and age of huge disparities in education and huge disparities in wealth. And what they do is they take young adults, ages of 18 to 24, who missed out on college for whatever reason. Many of these people are, they might be working at fast food, they might be working as store clerks, or they might not be working at all. They bring them in, they give them a paid schooling. They pay them to go to school for 6 months. They teach them how to work in a corporate environment, and they teach them some basic in the Bay Area technology skills. This is a national organization, so they also do this for financial services, customer service, and other functions. But at the end of the 6 months, then they intern these students out to companies like Facebook, Salesforce.com, Twitter, Kaiser Permanente, Wells Fargo, so on and so forth. And the success that they have in transforming people's lives from being in a class of work that basically would not result in financial independence and long-term success to being in the jobs of the future, sourced from this country, sourced from right here in places like downtown San Jose, Oakland, San Francisco. There's a fantastic source of talent. And what these people have is character. They have amazing characters. We talked about my tenacity, and the character strengths that I have pale in comparison to the individuals that I've met in this program that are just phenomenal and have had to deal with some massive life struggles to get to where they are. And that character gets refined into a phenomenal workforce. So that's what Europe does. It is an organization that I am just honored to be a part of. I was the executive who brought them into Facebook. Facebook now has a full-time, they don't just have a program where they sponsor students. They actually do a lot of the instruction on campus at Facebook's facility. I think they're doing something like 100 students a session now, which is just a massive scaling. Europe is, I think, approaching 20,000 students nationally that they have brought through their program. It is a great organization and something that helps me feel like we're building for the future and not just dealing with today's problems.
God, I love asking that question because I always hear things different from everybody, and that just warmed my heart. So that's awesome. Thank you for doing that, Tim. Sounds like a great organization to give your time to. And
by the way, they can both use time if anybody wants to help donate. Doing things like mock interviews and mentorship and things for students. And obviously, they're an organization that's growing. They can use capital if people want to donate to that. So.
Awesome. And they can be found at where?
YEARUP, Europe.org.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, and speaking of giving of time, thank you for giving your time to the audience here at Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do. This has been a great interview. Thank you for being so candid and sharing your journey and your advice.
Thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun, and I've really enjoyed it. And next time we will have to do this one over a beer. I think it'll make it even better.
I am all for that. If your travels ever bring you to Austin, I know all the good places to get beer.
All right, you're on.
Awesome. And if people want to find you, they can find you at woven.com?
That's correct.
Awesome. Well, Tim Campos, again, thank you for coming on and being part of our community here at Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do. And I say at every show, thank you to the listeners. If it wasn't for an audience, why would we even do this? The audience is growing. More people are finding out about Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do. They like interviews with people like Tim, or the Tuesday shows where it's me just pontificating about something I ran into in my own entrepreneurial journey. We do 2 shows a week. So please tell your friends. Go if you like the show, walk around your office and get everybody to subscribe. That's how the show gets found, is through word of mouth. So tell somebody. So we're going to be back in a couple of days with an interview with somebody just as cool as Tim Campos. I know you're thinking, what? How will you ever find anybody that cool? But we do it every time. But in the meantime, I'm going to challenge you to go out there and try something new. If we keep doing the same things, we're going to get the same results. So try new things. And while you're at it, have a great day.
Thank you for being part of the Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do podcast. Without your participation and listening to these conversations, there is no show. Connect with Tom at tomsinger.com and follow him on Twitter at TomSinger.